Chapter 1. Zoe. If anything happens to Luna, I swear I'll take you down with her. I snapped back to reality, realizing I was holding a cancer diagnosis report in my hand. Ryan's face was full of anger as he glared fiercely at me. I hesitated before speaking. Actually, this report. He suddenly stopped, turning back to look at me. You want to say that you've got a terminal illness? You forced me to marry you, tricked me into getting pregnant, and now you want to lie to me about cancer? I've never seen such a vicious woman like you. He spoke each word with emphasis, not even waiting for me to respond. He grabbed the diagnosis report from my hand and threw it at my face, cutting off what I truly wanted to say. At that moment, I understood he had been reborn too. In my previous life, when I received the cancer diagnosis, Ryan was extremely worried and took me to the hospital for a recheck right away. But on that very day, his first love was tragically killed on the dark streets at night. It turned out that the cancer was only a misdiagnosis, but Ryan came to resent me deeply, believing it was my fault she died. He didn't even let me finish my words back then. He slapped me to the ground, then dragged me by the hair to her grave, forcing me to kneel and apologize. Despite me carrying his child, he smashed my head against the gravestone repeatedly until blood was everywhere. If you hadn't faked cancer to hold me back, Luna wouldn't be dead. She was such a pure person, and she died in such a filthy place. Why wasn't it you who died? You owe her a life. His voice rang in my ears, my mouth filled with the taste of blood, and I almost passed out. After kneeling for hours, I suddenly felt warmth flowing underneath me. I panicked, grabbing Ryan's sleeve and pleading for help, but he slapped me across the face. Stop pretending. Do you think I'd still believe you? Don't think that just because you're pregnant with my child, you'll escape punishment. Zoe, I want you to spend your life paying for what you did to her, but I didn't have the rest of my life. I died that rainy night from blood loss, with my unborn child. Maybe that baby felt the unfairness of my death, and somehow I was given another chance. Now, as I watch Ryan turn away without hesitation, running back to his first love, I don't try to stop him. I throw the diagnosis report into the trash. I won't go for another checkup. I won't tell him the truth about the misdiagnosis. The real person with cancer isn't me. It's him. Chapter 2. That night, Ryan went to see Luna and never came back. I saw a lot of photos on Luna's social media moments. One was of a man bustling around the kitchen, making porridge for her. Another showed a bed covered in rose petals, along with several snapshots of their time together. Her caption read, "He's someone else's husband. So what? He's still washing my underwear." I stared at the pictures for a long time, feeling nothing. I even gave her a post. Ryan, on the other hand, messaged me when he saw it. He said that Luna wasn't feeling well and he was just staying to take care of her. And he warned me not to try anything funny. This marriage was founded on deceit from the very beginning. All of this is your own doing. I didn't respond. He didn't know that while he was away these past few days, I had already contacted a lawyer to prepare for divorce. This misguided relationship needed to come to an end. Heaven had granted me a chance to start over, and there was no way I was going to waste it on a terminally ill man. Once everything was ready, I finally contacted the hospital, not for a recheck, but to arrange an abortion. I no longer felt any attachment. It was the doctor who seemed surprised. "Are you sure you don't want to discuss this with the child's father? You fought so hard to keep this baby, and now you don't want it anymore?" I shook my head. It wasn't that I didn't want the baby. I knew it didn't want to come. When I was in poor health, I went through hell just to keep this pregnancy. Throughout the pregnancy, I was always careful, choosing the best food and products to help my condition. Sometimes, when I found something really nutritious, I would recommend it to Ryan. He always refused and would often joke, "Why is your pregnancy so complicated when others have it so easy? Maybe it's just because your body is weak. Going through all this trouble to have this baby. You must be planning to use the child to tie me down for life." At that time, I thought Ryan simply wasn't good at taking care of others. Until now, seeing him cook porridge for Luna, never leaving her side, I finally understood, it's not about ability. It's about willingness. This child had been reminding me to free myself, but I refused to see it and stubbornly tried to hold on. Now, It's all over. But my pregnancy was too far along, and I needed the father's signature for the induced labor. I made a few calls, but each time, the line was busy. Finally, in the evening, he picked up. There was nothing else I could do, so I was admitted to the hospital to wait. On my way to the ward, I spotted two familiar figures. Luna seemed to have twisted her ankle, and Ryan was holding her tightly, looking worried. "Luna, don't be afraid. I'm here," he said softly, but when he looked up and saw me, all his tenderness turned into disgust. "What are you doing here?" Chapter 3. They leaned on each other, and I, the wife, seemed more like the intruder in this couple's love story. Faced with Ryan's questioning eyes, I simply gave a cold smile. I have always known about Ryan's deep affection for Luna. They were originally a perfect match, equal in family status, until Luna's family fell into misfortune. Ryan's family did not want a daughter-in-law from a declining household, so they chose me instead. That night, my adoptive mother sent me to Ryan with a bowl of drugged soup. Because of that, Ryan hated me deeply and treated me with cold disdain even after our marriage. He tried everything to get rid of me, but after half a month, Ryan's resistance came to a halt. It was because Luna had started a new relationship and flew far away overseas with her lover. That night, Ryan got drunk and finally closed the distance between us that had always felt like two strangers sharing a bed. His tears were hot, falling on my skin, making me shiver. Shortly after, we found out I was pregnant. Although Ryan did not love me, he truly loved the baby. He decorated the nursery, secretly learned how to be a first-time dad, and treated me more gently with each passing day. His eyes were filled with anticipation. He said he would treat the baby and me well in the future. I believed him, but I didn't know that happiness had an expiration date. A few months later, Luna was abandoned overseas. On the day she returned, Ryan prepared to pick her up early in the morning. A lung cancer diagnosis interrupted his plans. After Luna died, Ryan directed all of his anger at me. If I hadn't been ill, he wouldn't have missed the chance to pick her up at the airport. If I hadn't appeared in his life, he wouldn't have been forced to marry me. He blamed me for ruining his beloved, for destroying his life. But hadn't he also ruined mine? Chapter 4. You were following me and Luna? Are you planning to hurt her again? Ryan has always assumed the worst of me, and now he stood protectively in front of Luna, shouting at me loudly. Unexpectedly, after yelling, he suddenly began coughing uncontrollably, his face full of pain. I just watched coldly, thinking of the cancer diagnosis. In my last life, when I received the diagnosis, it clearly stated that the patient had less than 6 months to live and needed immediate treatment. I was so worried about him at that time that even though I was pregnant, I rushed to tell him, only to be killed by him on the spot. And now, he has likely already missed the best time for treatment. I looked at him coldly, my voice calm. Luna just twisted her ankle, right? Instead of worrying about me hurting her, you should worry more about yourself. Ryan froze, seemingly aware that his health had been declining lately. He hesitated, but Luna interrupted him. Sister Zoe, how can you be so malicious? She cried, clinging to Ryan's arm and looking at me with teary eyes. I know you've always been jealous of me, but how could you curse Ryan like that? He is your husband. Ryan, led by her words, looked at me with disgust. Let's go, he said to Luna without looking back at me. The more I look at her, the more disgusting she seems. Wait! I panicked and reached out to stop them. Sign the consent form for the termination first, and then you can go wherever you want. Termination? Ryan turned back to me and sneered. Now you're trying to use the baby to threaten me? You used to cling to me like a leech, and now you're pretending to be indifferent? Zoe, I have no time to play these games with you. His words were harsh, clearly refusing to cooperate. I was desperate, blocking their path and refusing to move. In the midst of the struggle, Ryan actually pushed me. I fell to the ground, instinctively cradling my 7-month pregnant belly. Ryan saw my actions and immediately smirked, as if catching me red-handed. You say you want to end it, but look at you, you're more afraid than anyone of something happening. Pain filled my vision with stars, and I couldn't respond for a moment. I just reached out, trembling, Trying to grab his hand, Ryan moved reflexively to take my hand, but Luna let out a soft cry. My ankle, it hurts. Tears welled up in her eyes as she pretended to be strong, saying to Ryan, if Ryan wants to take care of my sister, I can go to the doctor alone. It's fine. Probably remembering how she tragically died in the previous life after he chose me. Ryan's face changed. He immediately withdrew his hand and held her hand tightly. She loves to play the victim to gain sympathy. I won't be fooled again. Forget her. Luna, I'll go with you to see the doctor. You are the most important to me. Chapter 5. After speaking, Ryan didn't even glance at me before leaving with Luna. Before disappearing, Luna turned back and flashed me a triumphant smile. I couldn't understand why she was so proud of taking a man who had only 6 months left to live. The pain left me unable to stand, and I lost all hope for him. Instead, I called the doctor for help. My condition is bad. I might need to deliver early. After making the call, I lost consciousness. That fall led to severe bleeding, and my condition became critical. In life and death situations, there was no need for spousal consent. What mattered most was saving my life. Under anesthesia, while I was unconscious, the child left my body. After the surgery, I quietly shed tears. Not for Ryan, he wasn't worth it. I cried for the child who never got a chance to be born. I stayed in the hospital for half a month, and during that time, Ryan never reached out to me. On the contrary, it was the doctor who wouldn't give up and kept calling him. I've never seen such an irresponsible father. The doctor said angrily, the baby's gone. Your wife is hospitalized, and the husband doesn't even come to visit. I smiled and shook my head. He wouldn't be my husband for much longer. However, perhaps thanks to the doctor's persistence, I finally saw Ryan again on the day I was discharged. He was full of impatience, standing by my bed, still refusing to believe that the baby was gone. How did you manage to convince the doctor to play along in this charade? You took a small fall, and now you're exaggerating? The pregnancy was stable. There's no way anything could have happened. I stayed silent for a long moment before murmuring, I just didn't want to force this baby to stay. Ryan frowned and looked down at me condescendingly. Already at 7 months and you couldn't keep it? Don't you find it ridiculous to lie like this? You think I'd believe that you'd dare to get rid of it? I looked at him and asked, is it true that no matter what I say, you won't believe me? Yes, Ryan answered without hesitation. In my past life, if I'd been in this moment, I would have been devastated. But this time, I simply smiled without any reluctance and said, fine, as you wish. Let's get a divorce. Ryan paused, then sneered, are you joking again? You used such despicable means to marry me. How could you possibly want a divorce? Enough. I don't have time for your nonsense. Do whatever you want. I won't play along. I closed my eyes and slowly spoke. Ryan, I don't want to play along either. In my bag, there's a divorce application. Sign it, and let's part ways. He froze for a moment, quickly walked to the bedside, and actually pulled out a divorce application from my bag. No way, he said, face pale. You're lying. The baby is gone, and I've already settled our shared assets over the past few days. I said calmly, Ryan, I'm not lying. His eyes reddened, and he shook his head repeatedly. I don't believe it. How could you? Midway through his sentence, his emotions got the best of him, and suddenly he collapsed to the ground, coughing uncontrollably. After a long fit, he spat out a mouthful of blood. What is this? He looked at the blood on the floor in disbelief, terrified. What's happening to my body? Before he could finish, he spat out another mouthful of blood. He's already started coughing up blood. The commotion was too much, and the nurse rushed in to check on him. People hurriedly moved him out of the room. I, on the other hand, made no move, remaining seated on the bed with an indifferent expression. Ryan looked at me in his panic, reaching out as if he wanted to hold on to me, but I just silently mouthed something to him. You brought this upon yourself. Chapter 6. Ryan's sudden illness caused an uproar in both families. I stayed home to rest and recover for a few days. One day, a person I hadn't seen in a long time suddenly appeared in front of me, my adoptive mother. Sandra, The last time we met was at my wedding. Over a year had passed. Yet Sandra still looked composed and aloof. She sat down in the living room with a stern face and immediately began questioning me. What's going on between you and Ryan? There's a woman named Luna who's been at the hospital taking care of him every day. What's the point of raising you if you're useless? I said nothing. Since I was a child, I knew Sandra didn't like me. She couldn't have children of her own. So she decided to adopt one. My adoptive father saw me at the orphanage and took a liking to me immediately. Sandra always thought I must have used some trick to make my adoptive father favor me. From the day she brought me home, I lost the right to speak for myself. She took away everything from me, never allowing me to do anything against her will. Although I studied the field I loved, I was not allowed to pursue the career I wanted. She only wanted me to be a dutiful wife and mother, one who could secure unbreakable business ties for her. Sandra, seeing my silence, began to berate my actions over the past few days. I gave you a respectable life, arranged a suitable marriage for you, and how do you repay me? Why did you decide on your own to terminate the pregnancy? And what's this about Ryan's illness? I took a deep breath. Did you only come back because he's sick? Sandra frowned, a husband coughing up blood. And you're so indifferent? Indeed, you're nothing but an ungrateful wretch. Suddenly, I felt like laughing. In my previous life, when I was diagnosed with lung cancer, my adoptive father was worried and wanted to return home. But Sandra grabbed the phone and told me not to disturb their trip. I used to think she simply disliked me, but now I realized it wasn't just dislike. She hated me to the core. In my past life, I was cautious and careful, hoping that one day she would accept me and I would receive the familial love I yearned for. Perhaps it was my time at the orphanage that made me long for a home so much. At first, it was Sandra, and later, it was Ryan. I almost had no sense of self when I was with them, constantly giving in, just hoping that they would change their perception of me and grant me the warmth of a family. But human nature is like a stone. No matter how much effort you put in, it cannot be moved. Hoping for others to give you warmth is the beginning of tragedy. I took a deep breath. Considering you drugged me, I think I've been polite enough. You never treated me as a daughter, so I have no reason to treat you as a mother. Sandra's face turned pale. I didn't care what she thought. I turned around and headed upstairs. I need to rest now. Do as you please. Chapter 7. After falling out with Sandra, I was almost immediately condemned by old friends and acquaintances. In the world she created, I was the scheming girl from a poor family, and it was thanks to her nurturing and support that I had reached my current status. And now, I was abandoning my husband during his illness and treating my adoptive mother with arrogance. It was simply unforgivable. I didn't have the time to deal with all of this. On my first day back from the hospital, I climbed up to the attic and retrieved an old, dusty wooden box. Inside was an invitation that had long since expired. Before Sandra had drugged me, I had put together a portfolio and sent it to a top fashion design studio. But by the time I received a reply, I was already wearing a wedding dress. It was the only key that could have freed me from my shackles, but it had arrived too late. Now I understood it wasn't that the opportunity had come late, it was that the old me was too weak, afraid to walk independently, too scared to seize the chance. For years, I had never watched a single fashion show. Those beautiful designs would have only pierced my heart, leaving me filled with regret over what I had lost, my dreams. When I finally emerged from the shadows of my past, I found the courage to face them. I replied to the invitation without much hope, and to my surprise, I received a response once again. Since too much time had passed, they wanted me to provide recent designs so they could reassess whether I qualified to join. Their open attitude filled me with joy. If you bravely take that step, opportunities will present themselves. I turned off my phone and threw myself entirely into my designs. Several days later, after I completed my sketches and sent my latest designs, I noticed my phone was flooded with various messages. Among them was one from Ryan's attending physician, urging me to come to the hospital as soon as possible. I already had a feeling about what he wanted to tell me. Stage 4 lung cancer, naturally. The doctor needed to discuss the next steps with the family. Ryan and I still had things left unsaid. After some thought, I decided to go, if only to finally bring an end to everything. Chapter 8. After a few days apart, Ryan's condition had visibly worsened. Luna was awkwardly feeding Ryan some porridge, and the scalding hot liquid spilled on his collar. He was about to lose his temper when he noticed me. Immediately changing to a gentle demeanor, "Luna, you've never taken care of anyone before. It's already very tough on you to be doing this much for me." Tears filled Luna's eyes as she gazed at the pale, weak man. "I'm sorry, Ryan. I wish I could be the one sick instead, and that the person who made you cough blood would suffer endlessly." The two of them were clearly putting on a show, and I was their target. When Luna turned around and saw me, her expression immediately became stubborn and resentful. "Zoe, if you have any grievances, you can come at me. Why did you have to harm Ryan? You're pregnant. How could you do something so cruel and despicable?" Suddenly, she paused. She noticed that my stomach had become flat. Luna looked somewhat puzzled. "Did you really get rid of the baby?" I didn't want to argue with her. "It's none of your business." Luna quickly found a reason to justify things to herself. "I knew it. You were always using that child to threaten Ryan, but he'd rather have you get rid of it than give in. I really hope you won't do anything extreme anymore." I looked at Luna coldly, feeling only irony. She still didn't know that Ryan's lung cancer had progressed to the point where he couldn't stop coughing up blood. Even if she managed to win against me, there would be no award waiting for her. Ryan struggled to speak. "Luna." Luna immediately turned around, holding Ryan's hand and crying pitifully, the blush on her cheeks, the small sparkles at the corner of her eyes. It was clearly a carefully crafted fragile look. But Ryan's face softened, full of concern. "Don't be upset. I'm fine." The next second, the doctor walked in. "What's with all the noise?" "The patient needs rest." Luna pouted but couldn't hold back from asking, "What's wrong with Ryan? Did someone anger him until he coughed blood?" The doctor gave her a look. "Are you family?" Luna was stunned. Chapter 9. Ryan suddenly spoke up. "She is." After saying that, he seemed to want to provoke me, intentionally giving me a challenging look. "The one I love is my true partner." I couldn't help but laugh. Ryan was always like this. He was convinced that I had used all kinds of means to get close to him, obsessed with him beyond reason. In his view, everything I did was to attract his attention, and his favorite thing to do was to trample on my feelings, to make me realize how insignificant I was to him. The more I used to care for him, the more ridiculous that rainy night became. That near-death experience taught me many things, and the most important one was to never let anyone influence me again. Nothing mattered more than my own feelings. Seeing that I remained unmoved, a hint of surprise flashed across Ryan's face. He gritted his teeth, threatening harshly, "You've ignored me these past few days. But even if you kneel down and beg, I won't forgive you." Luna immediately tried to console him. "Ryan, you shouldn't treat Zoe like that. She just cares about you too much. That's all." Ryan, hearing Luna's words, became even more arrogant. "Zoe, you actually dared to abort our child and ignored me for days. It seems you don't want to be Mrs. Ryan anymore." I no longer wanted to see his foolish face, so I asked the doctor directly, "Doctor, what exactly is the cause of Mr. Ryan's coughing up blood?" The doctor hesitated slightly. "I was planning to discuss this with you privately first. I couldn't wait to see Ryan's reaction." "No need. You can tell, based on his attitude, that he won't listen to anything I say. Please, just tell us directly." The doctor spoke with a heavy heart. "Mr. Ryan, you are in the final stages of lung cancer." Chapter 10. Those 4 words made Ryan freeze. Then, the doctor revealed that Ryan had missed the final treatment window, and now only had 3 months left to live. Luna was also stunned. "No way. Doctor, Ryan is so young." Ryan, too, snapped out of his confusion. "You must be lying to me. Zoe is the one who is sick." "No. Zoe must have tricked me on purpose." The doctor looked hesitant but still spoke the harsh truth. If the sample hadn't been mixed up during the physical examination, Ryan could have had a chance to catch it earlier. "No, how could it be me?" Ryan shook his head in disbelief, unable to accept the diagnosis in front of him. Suddenly, he looked up at me. No. At that time, you." I looked at him sympathetically. "If it had been just a simple misdiagnosis, do you think I would have rushed to find you?" His face turned pale. "How could you remember? You also." He finally realized that I had also been reborn. Seeing his gradual breakdown, I said coldly, "You had the chance to save yourself, but you chose not to." The Zoe who, upon learning the truth, had braved the storm to find him, the Zoe who cared for him deeply, was killed by his own hands. Before leaving, I threw the divorce papers in front of him again, whether he signed them or not. I knew that in just a few months, I would be free. I no longer cared about his decision, but I needed to make my stance clear. I, Zoe, no longer wanted Ryan in any way. Chapter 11. After getting rid of Ryan and Sandra, my life seemed to instantly become much clearer. A good mood seems to bring good fortune too. After an anxious wait, the studio sent me a congratulatory email, inviting me to participate in their winter fashion show. I was almost ecstatic. No matter the final outcome, I was finally close to the dream I had once missed. However, leaving wasn't as easy as I imagined. Sandra's pressure grew increasingly relentless, and Ryan began to call me obsessively. I planned to leave in secret, but that morning, when I opened the door with my suitcase, I was met with Ryan's face. He was wearing the clothes from when we first met, putting on a forced smile. Ryan's voice was somewhat lower, and he reached out, trying to hold my hand. "Zoe, please come home with me, okay?" I said coldly. "Do you still have a home?" His face immediately turned pale. A lot had happened to Ryan in these past few days. Just as he was told he had terminal cancer and only a few months left, his family recognized a long-lost illegitimate child. I was a bit surprised when I heard the news, but after some thought, I understood everything. In wealthy families, there is rarely warmth. Ryan, the heir, didn't have long to live. This had a dire impact on the family. In this critical moment, the previously unseen illegitimate son became their saving grace. With the return of the illegitimate son, Ryan's family still had someone to carry on their legacy. And Ryan, he was nothing more than a discarded pawn, although he tried his best to dress as he always did, appearing like a noble young man. The illness had already taken its toll on his body. I pushed him away forcefully. Ryan staggered back, falling down the steps at the entrance. As I took a step forward to leave, two people stood in my way. My adoptive parents. Sandra looked at Ryan with disgust, and her attitude toward me was even more impatient. "Zoe, you've caused enough trouble. I'm giving you one last chance to apologize to me. Otherwise, don't even think about stepping into my house again." I asked. "Do you mean stepping into your house, so you can drug me and send me to another arranged marriage candidate's bed?" My voice wasn't loud, but it made everyone present look uncomfortable. Ryan looked at me in disbelief. "Drugged? Wasn't it you who wanted me? That's why you." Chapter 12. Sandra didn't bother hiding anything anymore, letting out a cold snort. "If you had listened to me, I wouldn't have had to do those unnecessary things. I raised you, so repaying me is only natural." "Enough!" came an unexpected roar. My adoptive father looked at Sandra with a pained, disappointed expression. "How could you drug Zoe? Even if you don't like her as a daughter, you shouldn't have treated her like this." Sandra was momentarily stunned, then flew into a rage. "Whose daughter? She's the child of you and that woman. Letting her live was already merciful. She should be my pawn, forever atoning for her mother's sins." Sandra's words hit me like a hammer. I looked at my father, and he glanced at me with a guilty expression. "Zoe, you are my biological daughter," Sandra continued coldly. "Now you know why he insisted on adopting you." "Zoe? I was giving you the opportunity to make amends for your mother, who died early." My father tried to persuade me softly. "Zoe, just listen to her. We were wrong." Emerging from the shock of this revelation, I finally understood everything. No wonder Sandra hated me with such deep resentment. No wonder my father cared for me but never dared to be too obvious about it. In her eyes, my very existence was a sin. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and then spoke. "Sandra, is it worthwhile to deceive yourself like this?" Sandra, seeing me so defiant, moved to strike me. "How dare you talk back?" Ryan, struggling to his feet, shielded me from the blow. I stared at Sandra, striking directly at her core. "You think I should atone? You think everything was my mother's fault, but you believe your husband was pure? You can't accept that he betrayed you, that he also lost his way, so you pushed all the blame onto my mother and onto me? Sandra, you have oppressed me, drugged me, but why can't you bring yourself to confront the one who truly hurt you? Why not make the real wrongdoer admit to his mistakes? Sandra was speechless, her breath growing ragged as she sputtered. You. After all, she was getting on in years, and her blood pressure surged, causing her to faint. My father caught her, hurriedly calling the nearby driver to help, and they headed to the hospital. I looked down at Ryan, still lying on the ground, remembering how he had shielded me from Sandra's slap. I decided to reach out and help him up. Ryan's eyes lit up. Zoe, you're finally willing to forgive me. Chapter 13. I took a step back. I'm leaving. You should return to the hospital and rest. He gave me a pale smile. Zoe, please don't be mad at me anymore, all right? I looked at him suspiciously. Ryan lowered his head and began coughing violently before stepping forward, trying to take my hand. He moved with difficulty. Zoe. They all lied to me. Now I finally understand that you're the only one who ever truly loved me. I spoke coldly. Why don't you go find your Luna? Ryan's face darkened even further. He almost seemed to grit his teeth. She betrayed me. But she got what she deserved. It turned out that Luna had been very busy these past few days. After she learned about Ryan's illness, she comforted him until he fell asleep. Then, she turned around and ran off with his credit card and watch. When Ryan woke up and tried to find her, he realized he had been blocked again. Luna was even more heartless than me. If I'd known you were just a dying man, I wouldn't have wasted my time. Ryan saw her true colors for the first time. He dragged his ailing body to look for Luna, wanting to ask if she had been forced into this. Instead, he saw her happily getting into another man's car. The next day, the same news came as it did in the previous life. His first love died tragically on a dark street. Only now did Ryan realize Luna hadn't simply been caught in an accident. She had gotten involved with the wrong people. Though he had briefly prevented her death in this life, he couldn't stop her from walking the same path as before. Ryan lost his family, and he lost his love. At his lowest moment, he finally thought of me, with a softness I had never seen before. He said, Zoe, I was wrong. Give me one more chance, please? I shook my head, recalling that classic line, it's not that you know you were wrong, you're just afraid of dying. The high and mighty young master had lost everything. Even the love he thought would never change had abandoned him. I stepped back coldly, trying to distance myself from him. Ryan, everything between us ended a long time ago. He shook his head, tears springing up almost immediately. I don't believe it. I know you've always loved me, haven't you? In the past, I didn't understand. I was deceived by Luna. She told me she had been forced to leave the country by you. I always thought it was your ruthless schemes. When you were pregnant, I was truly happy too. I thought that with a child, I would just accept my fate and be a good husband to you. I didn't know you hadn't lied to me, Zoe. I know I won't live much longer. I'm not asking you to still love me. I only want you to forgive me. His eyes were fixed on me, filled with the despair and plea of a dying man. How pitiful, his deathbed repentance. But, unfortunately, he had found the wrong person. Forgiving him would be a betrayal of myself. I shook my head. Ryan, you're better off dead. The last glimmer of hope in his eyes faded away. I grabbed my suitcase and walked away from him without looking back. The sun was shining brightly. All the shadows I had lived under were now behind me. In front of me lay nothing but a brilliant new beginning.